Welcome into another episode of Clipboard Conversations. John Foke alongside Hornets head coach James Borrego. Coming up, we'll do our Ask JB segment, but a little bit different this time around as we hit coming up on the midway point of the season. We'll kind of update things in terms of those four pillars that we've been talking about throughout this season. We'll take a look ahead as the Hornets have one more home game before they head out on the road. But first, Coach, we'll start with the trends. And I think the trend coming out of the beginning of 2020, late game execution. Once again, we saw this team go on the road, rally back, close out against the Clippers. In overtime, close out against the Dallas Mavericks. You've got the number 3 offense in clutch time. Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier, top 10 in scoring in clutch time. What is it about this group that seems to find ways to execute successfully in those situations?
Well, there's a couple things. I think the guys are really executing what we've worked on in practice. So we talk a lot about situational moments. We've really elevated that part of our practice plan and our focus. So guys understand what we're trying to get accomplished in those moments, and we're execute on both sides of the ball. But in the end, you got to score, and you got to give Terry and Devontae a ton of credit, making big shots, making big plays, and then obviously making big stops down the stretch. But they're confident. I think where I see a lot of growth and positivity is those two guys in those moments, those big moments, stepping up. You got to have one or two guys step up in big moments, and they're comfortable in those moments. Both Terry and Devontae, that's a positive for us. And then just our defense has really picked up. Getting big stops. 9 out of 11 possessions, we got stops. In Cleveland, in Dallas, big time stops. So understanding the moment and then executing what we work on.
And I know one thing that we've talked about throughout the course of the season is rebounding. And when you're getting stops in clutch time, you've got to get the rebound to be able to come back and execute.
Yeah, that Cleveland game was a great example. I mean, it was Tristan, it was Kevin Love on the board, and big stops, big rebounds, everybody digging it out. Obviously, we need to have that mentality for 48 minutes. But when the games are close, we've been in the mix, and the numbers speak for themselves, both in the clutch games, one-possession games. When we get to those moments, we're very comfortable, and we tend to execute, and we play our best basketball of those 48 minutes. So I think the goal now for me, and as any young team is growing, how do we get that for more 48 minutes than just that, the last 5-6 minutes? As we grow in that area, we'll only become a better team.
And when you talk about what Devontae and Terry can do in terms of diversifying in those final couple of moments, but there's ball movement too, which opens things up for those guys.
For sure. Teams can't, hone in on one guy. I think it's ball movement, it's execution. Devontae's coming down, hitting the open man. We saw Biz in the pocket, catching, finishing. Cody's made plays for other people. I think Miles had 2 big-time passes in the Dallas game on the road. Maturity and growth for him. I haven't seen that play out of him in a while. To drive it baseline, get cut off, come back, drive, kick it to Terry for a wide open 3. Big time execution, poise, and decision making by Miles. So these are all positive steps for us. I love being in these close games, even though it's stressful for me and for all of us and our fans and everybody. Trust me, it's helping us. It's big picture. We're only going to get better from this. And when we're in these moments down the road, we're going to be poised and we're going to execute. That's a positive sign for all our fans and all our followers out there. The fact that we can close out close games like this, win, is really positive for us.
One thing that stood out really over the course of the season as a whole, not just in clutch time, your transition defense. You're in the top 5 in terms of fast break points allowed. What's the secret to behind how successful you guys have been in terms of guarding transition?
Well, we made our number one emphasis defensively is just to get back, set our defense. We put a real emphasis there from training camp on that we don't want to give up anything easy. And I think we've hit that pillar for the most part defensively. Obviously, we got other parts that we're growing, we got to get better in, but just an emphasis to get back, bodies in front of bodies, understanding when shot goes up, do I have the ability to go crash the boards? And, recently we've been turning Miles loose a little bit more, PJ loose a little bit more on the offensive boards. We need that. But when they recognize that I don't have an advantage, I got to get back, get bodies in front of bodies. I like our communication right now in transition defense. That's got to continue. That's got to be our number one priority defensively before we do anything.
And it seems like the live ball turnovers have started to come down as well. I know that was something we talked about at the beginning of the season, but over the last couple of months, it seems like especially those ones on the perimeter have gone down.
For sure. I mean, if you're turning it over, that's going to lead to transition points. So obviously early in the season, we were turning it over a ton. We've had a few games here recently where we got, the Dallas game, too many turnovers. But in general, I think our offense has got to help our defense. Running good offense, not turning it over, setting our defense is the #1 priority.
The starting five of Devontae, Terry, Miles, PJ, and Biz, now 8-8 on the season. What do you like out of that group, and what have you seen that makes them successful?
Well, the #1 thing is starting the games defensively. With a defensive mindset, I think Biz is getting out there with he's got real purpose out there defensively. His communication, his energy, his defense really sets the tone. So I think that's really helped amp up our defense to start games. I think we even saw it last night. Even in that loss, we started with the right mentality defensively. So that's been solid. And I think Terry and Devontae balancing each other out in that starting unit, playing off each other. I think they're trying to get Miles going a little bit more recently. So it's the combination. It's a balance of defense, with Biz and now getting PJ back in that lineup. I think we missed him in that stretch. We were playing well. He gets hurt in Chicago. We hit a little dry patch offensively, but PJ gives us great balance offensively. There's versatility. We're not just guard-driven with Devontae and Terry. PJ balances us with a little bit of interior presence, the ability to stretch the defense and drive the defense. So we missed him. We welcome him back. I think he's played well since he's been back as well.
And his court vision, I know you and I have talked about it on the pregame show, but he had the season-high 5 assists, and you can play through him in the post as well.
We can, and we will. We'll continue to do that, whether teams switch him or we just go straight to him. He can play make out of there. He can score out of there. We need that paint pressure out of the post. So we'll continue to go to him. I think Miles has done that as well in a few of our games, playing through those two guys against the mismatches or just to collapse the defense. So we play so much pick and roll with Devontae and Terry. It's great balance to have Miles and PJ in the post as well.
All right, so good stuff happening for the Charlotte Hornets. Coming up, we'll tell you what's up next as the Hornets have one home game before heading out on the road to face some tough teams out west. And when we come right back, we're going to do our Ask JB, where we update the 4 pillars for this Charlotte Hornets season. You're watching Clipboard Conversations. Clipboard Conversations continues. It's time for Ask JB. A little bit different here. Instead of going to the Twitter poll, because we already know what your go-to karaoke song is, so we don't have to revisit that. We wanted to update, though, the 4 pillars, and I know this is something that you discussed at the beginning of the season. We've kind of kept an eye on it, but compete every night, player development, style of play, and develop an identity, and then build winning habits. As we come up on the midway point of the season, how are we progressing in those 4 pillars?
Well, we'll start with the first one, compete. I think we could check that box. We're competing every single night. I feel like our guys have been responsive in that area, that every night we come in with a mentality to compete, and we don't die. Even when we're down, we keep fighting. When we're up, we keep fighting. And I think there's a resiliency about this team and a competitive spirit. I'm finding a real competitive drive out of this group. Devontae, Terry, very competitive kids. And then down the line from there, everybody has stepped up. Our veterans, our young guys, they compete their tail off every single night. So I'm very happy in that area. There's a no give up mentality around here. We're going to fight. And then player development obviously is the lifeblood of who we are and what we're doing moving forward. And I think there's a lot of signs here of growth and development. You go back to last year, you go to this year, we are trending in the right way. And when players come here, whether we draft them, we add them through free agency, we trade for them, they're going to get better in our program. And I think there's a number of examples of that throughout our program. Nobody saw Devontae Graham doing this. This is just through our development program. Terry Rozier having the best year of his career. And Miles taking a step up. PJ has shown great growth. Malik Monk, everybody's stepping up in these areas, getting better. And then you look at our veteran guys. Bismack Biyombo's having a very efficient year, and these are things he's worked on as a veteran. So I could go down the line, but in general, our players are getting better. We are trending the right way. There's a lot of upside here, and there's a plan in place for all of them. So I've been very pleased with our player development program, and I give our staff a ton of credit. The ones that are working their tail off behind the scenes are our assistant coaches, putting in the time and effort to develop these young men, staying with them every single day, watching film on the practice court. And it's tough in this NBA season to practice a tremendous amount. You know, there's not a lot of time for practice. We've had 39 games to this point, not a lot of practice time. So how do guys continue to develop? It's through these, between myself and the assistant coaches, really putting time in the video room, on the court when we can sneak in, you know, a good 30, 40-minute workout. So behind the scenes, our players are in a good place. And then our identity, you know, obviously defensively, first of all, we got to continue to get better in that area. I understand that. You know, our players understand that. For us to be a top-level organization and team, we have to get better on the defensive end. There's some trends there that we're moving the right way defensively. We're not perfect, but I like our physicality. I like our rebounding more. Our paint's a little bit more shorted up right now. Our transition defense is up. We don't like where our ranking is defensively, but I think we're seeing some signs there of real growth. Offensively, look, we've been a solid offense for the last 2 years, and you know, as I look at this year, our shot profile is where we want it. You know, our attack at the rim. I think you look at our numbers throughout the league. Our pressure on the rim in the paint is up. Our passes are up. Our ball movement is up. Our assist rate is up. Our numbers of pick and roll. I think we're just seeing a strong profile being built here offensively, and I think our guys understand that, and we're only going to get better in that area, you know, as we go. So those are two areas that obviously we got to continue to grow in. And then the winning habits. You know, to me, the winning habits are when we come to practice every day, what do we feel like? What do we look like? Are guys professional? Are they disciplined? Are they working? And we're checking those boxes, and it's a work in progress. I mean, young guys, there's a sense at times that we can be complacent. And it's our job as coaches, as a staff, to keep pushing these young guys to get better, to not be complacent, to keep growing every single day and come into practice and work. And those are the habits we're talking about, that when things are going well, do we continue to work and develop? Do we want to come in with a hunger the next day and get better? Not be relaxed and come in after a 2-game winning streak and just sit back and relax. We don't want to have that mentality around here. We want to get back to work and get better. And that's something we're continuing to grow in, and I have to push for that. Our veterans have to push for that. Our leaders have to push for that. So as I look at the pillars right now, you know, almost halfway through the season, I'm pleased, but I'm not satisfied. We got to continue to grow and push and develop, but I see some really positive trends as we move forward.
Certainly very exciting stuff. Coach James Borrego updating us on the 4 pillars. When we come back, we'll take a look ahead. What's up next for the Hornets? We'll get to that right here on Clipboard Conversations. Final segment of Clipboard Conversations as we take a look at the road ahead. Now for the Hornets, it's one home game against the Toronto Raptors. Then, Coach, go out on the road, West Coast swing matchups with Utah, Phoenix, Portland, and Denver. An opportunity to see 2 teams that are in the top 10 in offensive rating and 2 teams that are in the top 10 in defensive rating. Great opportunity to measure yourself against those teams.
Yeah, for sure. Starting with Toronto at home, you know, another shot to get a home win and play well and in front of our crowd. So we're going to be tested. They're obviously the NBA champions, and no matter who's on the floor, they play the right way, they play hard. So great test for us there, no matter who's on the floor for Toronto. And then to get out on the road, I really like this group on the road. I think our guys, there's something about being on the road with this young group, and they really bunker in together. They're focused. I've seen a real focus, especially on the road, you know, sort of us against the world mentality, and let's bunker in and fight. And I see us fighting more and more on the road. So great test. Those are very good teams that we're going to hit the road on. And obviously, you know, starting with Utah, very tough defense, and we're going to have to execute. We're going to have to run good offense. I thought we played them well here. You know, into the 4th quarter deep, we were right there with them. Obviously, going on the road, we're going to have to really execute and be poised and not turn it over. But I love going on the road with this team. I think it's going to tell us a lot about ourselves at this point, halfway through the season. And, you know, we're going to have to execute on both sides of the ball. But these are great tests for us, being out there on the road.
Not only are you facing great teams, but tough environments. I mean, Utah is always a tough place to play. You got to deal with the altitude in Denver. Portland's got a great environment. Is it unique for this young team, for a young team, I should say, to bunker down on the road, to have success on the road like this?
Yeah, I think at times I've seen it both ways. I've seen a lot of young teams really fall apart on the road, that when you get down, you hang your head and you just give in. This team just doesn't give in. You know, on the road we keep fighting, keep scrapping. They love playing on the road, backs against the wall sort of mentality. So, yeah, and I've had some teams where that's not been the case. This group is very different, but those are some very home court environments. You know, Portland's a great test. Phoenix is playing well. We know what that game looked like last time, and obviously Utah and Denver, two elite teams in the West. So really we'll test our resolve, our resiliency.
Ought to be a lot of fun coming up. Coach, appreciate the time. That is this week's episode of Clipboard Conversations.